a bit of time to roast them. But again, I'll walk you through it every single step of the way. So before I jump in, Fran, do we have any questions before we get started with our cooking?
It seems that Bettina is already making her potatoes in the oven. She's got a head start.
Yay!
She says they smell delicious. So I think this is going to be a very exciting class for everyone. But
Okay,
Deborah
thank you, Fran.
wanted
Thank
to
you,
know,
Tina.
can you use chicken breasts?
Yeah, so certainly you can use chicken breast, Deborah,
Yes,
and I'll
Deborah
definitely get to that. Yeah, I'll definitely get to that when we're making the chicken. So thank you for asking your question, and thank you for tuning in. Anything else, Fran?
Yes, Emily?
Yeah.
I never downloaded the PDF. Where was it?
So the PDF is sent to you in your email ahead of the class, but don't worry, I'll make sure that you have it after the class, okay?
Was it in the original invitation or in the confirmation?
It was in your confirmation.
Okay, I'll look for it.
Okay, and don't worry, I can send it again.
That's okay.
All right, thank you. All right, so you may have seen me sneakily pulling these out of the oven. So here are our potatoes. So I absolutely love to roast vegetables. It brings out the natural sweetness of the vegetable. And these little potatoes are the small, you want to use either fingerling or creamer potatoes. These are the little creamer ones. And I just tossed this in a mix of spices and olive oil. The spices that I used today were freshly ground fennel seed, which looks like this, some red pepper flakes, right, your regular red pepper flakes, and then some bay leaves. So usually whenever we use bay leaves, we kind of drop them in a soup and then pick them out and throw them out. But in this recipe, we're actually, I ground the bay leaf really finely into a powder with our other spices to make this nice kind of spice mixture, and I toss the potatoes in that. I also used a little bit of salt and olive oil, and those black sort of things that you see dancing around the tray there, those are chopped Kalamata olives. So this is a really nice savory accompaniment to our chicken dish. Any questions about our potatoes, Fran?
Yes, regarding the bay leaf, are they fresh or dried?
They are dried bay leaf. And I just want to show you, how do you know these potatoes are done? First of all, I spread them out on one layer on the sheet pan, and I added a little olive oil to that, and I made sure the cut side was down on that parchment paper. I always use parchment paper. It makes it a lot easier to clean. And the other way you can tell if these potatoes are done is that they're completely fork tender. So you can kind of test them. You can, pop your fork into one and see if it goes in easily, then these potatoes are done. Another question, Fran?
Yes, actually, so Jackie could not find fennel seeds. Any substitutions? I was just going to reply with, I looked it up that you can use caraway seeds or dill seeds. Is that
dill seeds are kind of similar. So fennel seeds, here, Jackie, I'll hold that up so you can see it even better. Fennel seeds, they have a really distinct anise kind of a flavor. So if you can't, usually I found these ones at ShopRite. They're really great because they're good for digestion, and especially if you're having like a heavy French meal, it's nice to have some fennel seed in there. And if you can't find them, you can just leave them out. You can just roast the potatoes with like a little salt and pepper, and you don't even need the spices, but they do add a certain something. Je ne sais quoi. All right.
That's interesting. And a quick question from Donna Bass. She's asking, why can't we use crushed leaves in soups, sauces?
Yeah, so Donna, you're referring to the bay leaves, right? So usually when we use bay leaves, we just stick the whole thing in and then fish it out, as I mentioned at the start of class. You either want to use them whole or pulverize them to a powder, not in between. So the reason for that is that bay leaves are very sharp. So if you kind of leave them crumbled in sort of small pieces like this, it's not going to be pleasant to eat. It's going to be kind of sharp, and you'll feel it kind of going down your throat. So you don't want that, Donna.
Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so I'm going to jump into our dessert first, we're gonna make the chocolate pot de crème, which is traditionally made with lots of heavy cream and butter and chocolate and all of those sort of higher fat foods. And we're gonna be using something that is never seen in French cuisine. We're gonna be using silken tofu. So this is what the package looks like. And I made a batch of these ahead of time because they do need about 30 minutes to sit and set in the refrigerator, but I'm gonna show you how I made those. So let's get started with that. I have a pot here. I'm just gonna get it heated up. And you know what? I have to keep my oven on for the chicken, which we'll do next. Make sure I didn't turn that off completely. Okay. So we're gonna get our pot hot here. And this is very, very simple. We're gonna make basically like a simple syrup. So this is just water. And you guys have the exact measurements in your packets. I'm gonna do the recipe in half because I have half a block of tofu here. So that'll make about 3 or 4 pot de crème. And I'm gonna add some cane sugar. So 1/4 cup of cane sugar. And you just wanna mix this until it dissolves completely. So I have a little whisk here. And you'll see, it'll go from being sort of like a cloudy color to being completely transparent, and you won't see any of those granules of sugar in there. So that's basically what we're looking for. We just want to dissolve it, and we want to get it hot because we're going to use that heated mixture to melt our chocolate chips. So we're going to be using a blender for this. I'm using a Vitamix, which is my preferred choice of blender, but of course you can use whatever you have at home. And we're gonna use, I have these mini chocolate chips. The brand that I'm using today is this one, but you can use whatever you like. This one does have a good amount of sugar in it. So you can find an even darker chocolate chip, or you can use, you know, a block of chocolate and just chop it up really small and finely so you have like little pieces. Either, you know, any of those things is fine. Use your favorite, you know, kind of chocolate that you enjoy. That's what I recommend, is something that you really like, because that's going to be the predominant flavor of this dessert. So our next step here is going to bring the heat up just a little bit more. We'll add our chocolate chips in here. And then once that's hot, it's going to go right over the chocolate chips. That's going to melt them, and we're going to blend it up on my blender base over here. Then we're going to add the silken tofu, and it's very important in this recipe that you use silken tofu, not firm tofu or extra firm tofu or any other variety. So if you can see here, the silken tofu almost has like the texture of a thick yogurt. So it's really, it's very, very soft, and it blends beautifully. So you won't have any kind of chunks or anything like that. It's going to be completely smooth, which is what you want for your pot de crème, something really, really luscious. Those of you who have taken classes with me before, I have made this recipe in previous classes because I love it so much. And then just a quick note on the sugar here. I've also experimented making this with coconut sugar instead of the cane sugar. So you have that substitution in your packets. That works just as well. Takes a little longer for the coconut sugar to dissolve, but that'll work too. It's also going to be a bit darker in color than if you use the cane sugar. So just keep that in mind, that that's all to be expected. And presumably you could also make this, if you are diabetic, with monk fruit sugar. So you can dissolve it the same way and then pour it over your chocolate chips. If you are diabetic, though, you're going to want to go with a really dark chocolate that doesn't have much sugar in it at all. So maybe 70%, 80% or higher. So we're going to pour. This is just starting to steam here. You can see the steam coming off the pot. I can see that there's no sugar particles left there. So I'm just going to pour this right over. It's really, really hot, so just be careful as you're doing this. It's good to have a blender that can resist heat. Some blenders are not very heat resistant, and then the top kind of pops off as they're blending. So just be careful if your blender is not designed for heat. See, this one has little steam vents, which lets the heat out. So we've got our chocolate chips in there. We're gonna always start on low, pop our little security blanket on that and start that up. So you can see here, the chocolate is pretty much already melted. Here, let me pull this forward so you guys can see even better. Perfect. So it's already melted. It's happens very, very quickly. And then I'm going to put in the rest of this tofu here. I feel like all of France is gasping right now. Tofu in the pot de crème. I don't know what my mother would say to me. We're going to add a little bit of vanilla bean.
Your mother's watching.
She's always watching. We're going to add a little bit of vanilla bean. So I found this vanilla bean paste, which is really easy to use. It's nice because it doesn't have alcohol in it, which is has a bit of a strong taste, but you can use your regular vanilla extract. It's always good to combine vanilla and chocolate. It brings out the chocolate flavor for whatever reason. And always good to add a pinch of salt in your desserts because it brings out the sweetness, even though it's salt. So that's really important too. All right, so let's get this started. It thickens up quite a bit when you add that tofu. And that's it. You basically just want to run it until it's smooth. It's gonna look like almost like a chocolate milkshake. Give you guys a nice pour here. So you can see it's very liquid, but it's going to firm up in the refrigerator. So this one, yeah, so half a recipe makes like 3 pretty full ramekins. So any questions on that recipe? And then I'm going to show you what they look like when they're out of the refrigerator. How's everybody doing?
Yes, so John would like to know, does the coconut sugar have a heavy coconut flavor? And following with that question, what do the French use instead of tofu?
So good question, John. The coconut sugar does not have a coconut flavor. It's definitely not like that overwhelming coconut flavor you get from coconut flakes and coconut milk. It's really just like sugar. It's sweet. It's a little bit like, has almost like a slight molasses taste. It's just a little bit of a deeper, richer flavor, but it's not like coconut. And what do the French use instead of tofu? Well, traditional pot de crème, I haven't made them in a very, very long time, but they usually have eggs in them and heavy cream, sometimes some butter, chocolate, and things like that. So I'm sure you could find a recipe for that somewhere else, but not in our kitchen today.
So you're basically using the tofu to sub for the egg.
Yeah, to sub for the egg and the heavy cream stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your great questions. So let's move on to our next dish here, which is our chicken. And for this one, I'm going to get a cast iron skillet. I should probably have gotten this hotter earlier because it does take a moment to heat up, but see how we do here. So I'm going to get this sort of over a high heat. And here is our chicken. I'm going to use my gloves for this. So you can see here the chicken has been rubbed with the same spice mixture that we're using for the potatoes. So really, really easy, right? Same spice mixture, the fennel, the red pepper flakes, and what was the third one? The bay leaf, right? So I grind those up using a little spice grinder. There's also a pinch of salt and pepper in there. And the most important thing whenever you're cooking chicken, fish, steak, whatever kind of meat you're cooking, you want it to be room temperature when you start cooking it. So I know this is a little counterintuitive because we always think of food safety first, and we should, whenever we think about cooking with meats. And we think, oh, how are we, leaving those out on the counter for an hour, 2 hours to bring those to room temperature, isn't that dangerous? So our food safety guidelines have told us that you can take meat out of the fridge to up to 2 hours before you're going to use it. After 2 hours is when that bacteria really starts to multiply. So just make sure it's within that 2-hour window. And then the reason it should be room temperature and not pulled from the, pulled from the refrigerator is that if you pull something from the refrigerator and you pop it into a hot pan, the outside is going to cook a lot faster than the inside, which is going to take longer to heat up. So this way, we have the same starting point across the board, where the outside and the inside are going to cook at the same rate, meaning that we won't end up with a dry result. Sometimes we tend to overcook things because the inside temperature isn't meeting that food safety temperature that we want it to get to because it's still cold from the refrigerator. I hope that made sense to everybody. Any questions, Fran?
Yes, actually, do you marinate the chicken or is it a dry rub?
So
This
it's
is
a
from
dry,
Gina.
we're using a, yeah, Gina, we're using a dry rub today, not a marinade, just our dry spices. And actually that leads me to another important point. Very important that your chicken be patted dry before you put it into your pan. You don't want any moisture on this chicken. The other thing is you don't want any overcrowding in your pan. So I have quite a few pieces here, but I'm not going to try to fit them all in. It's more important to me that they have sort of an even distribution of heat, and that things aren't overcrowded, because if they're too bunched together, they're going to steam and they're not going to brown, and you're not going to have that wonderful Maillard reaction, which is the browning that occurs when exposed to heat. Any other questions, Fran?
Not at this moment.
Okay, and the last thing I'll say about our chicken here is that I'm using a cast iron skillet. I love to use cast iron because it distributes the heat really well and it holds heat really well, meaning that, you know how sometimes you're cooking and the center of your pan is really hot, but the outer sides of the pan aren't as hot, right? So different pans distribute heat differently. So cast iron is great because it just distributes perfectly. So you're going to have the same temperature on the outside as you are on the inside. So I really like that about cast iron. And I also like it because it is a great non-stick option. So how do you make it non-stick? Well, you heat it up first, like we're doing today. And this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because we want to add oil to create a surface, but we don't want our oil to get too hot. So I'm ready with my chicken. I'm going to put this skin side down, right? And immediately oil goes in and chicken goes in so that the oil doesn't get too hot, right? You want your oil to get hot, but you don't want it to smoke. So let's pop our pieces in here. And what we're really looking to do is create a really good sear. You can see I'm kind of spacing things out. I'm doing this with my hands, but you could use a spatula if that's what you prefer. You're more comfortable with that. And you know what? I'm not going to squeeze anything else in. I'm just going to leave those as is, and we'll cook these pieces after class. All right.
Emily,
Yes, Fran.
if you don't have a cast iron skillet, what would be the best to use?
Well, if you don't have a cast iron skillet, I do recommend you get one because they're usually just about $25 to $30. They're not very expensive and they last a lifetime if you treat them right. So it's a great thing to get. I know holidays for many of us are coming up this week, so perhaps invest in a cast iron skillet. And if you don't have a cast iron skillet, your next best bet is going to be something with a nice heavy bottom, like even if you have like just a nice heavy pan. You want something that's kind of heavy, and that's going to be your best bet, whatever that is for you.
Thank you. And this next question from Barry, does leaving it on the bone add flavor?
Yeah, so Barry, thank you so much for asking that, because that actually brings me back to what our question at the start of class, which was about chicken breasts as well. So I'm using skin on, bone in. And the reason I'm doing that, Barry, is exactly for that reason. It's all about flavor. So if we're not using lots of butter and lots of cream and lots of beautiful French fatty foods, we got to get our flavor from something. So our flavor is coming from the skin, and the bone that's in there as well is going to contribute a lot to the flavor. Now, of course, We all know that chicken skin is where most of the saturated fat is for chicken, which is not great for heart health. So if that is something you're concerned about, you can go ahead and make this recipe with chicken breast. Just be mindful that you may have to adjust the cooking time. So because chicken breast doesn't have a bone in there, it's going to cook a lot faster, and it doesn't have skin on it. It's going to cook a lot faster than this recipe, which is first seared on the stovetop and then finished off in the oven. So that's a great question. And thanks for watching, Barry. All right.
Thank you.
So how do I know this is ready to move around? Well, it doesn't stick, right? So as soon as you can kind of move it and it's not sticking, that means that you can move it, you can flip it, right, to the other side. You do want it to be nice and golden brown. So I could even be wait a little longer, but being a little impatient today, right? So browning is flavor. Always remember that. And again, we're starting this on the stove, and then we're going to pop it into the oven and finish it in the oven.
So I have a few questions coming in.
Great, let's get them.
So being that the cast iron pan is heavy, and this is from Paula, would you use it on a glass stovetop? Just be careful with it, right?
Yeah, so Paula, I actually at home have an induction glass surface, and I do use my cast iron on it. So I think it's fine. Just don't smash it on your stovetop. Just like you said, Fran, be careful. Yeah.
Yes, and then Jackie wants to know if a rigid pan would work as well. I guess one of those grilling pans.
Yeah, so Jackie, you must have like one of those beautiful cast iron pans with the little rivets in it. I mean, that would work too. You're gonna get some browning, which is really nice. You're not gonna get a nice, smooth, like brown kind of piece. But certainly that's a better alternative, I think, than using something else. So thank you.
Yes.
Anything else, Fran?
One other question from from Patricia. And she's just asking a quick question if one can cook liquid that the meat has been marinating in. So an example, marinating a roast and then adding it to the roasting pan while meat is cooking.
Yeah. So Patricia, your question doesn't apply to our recipes today, but I hear what you're saying. Let's take, for example, chicken that's been marinating in teriyaki sauce. Can you cook the chicken perhaps in a pan and then add that sauce to the pan? And the answer is yes, you can, as long as you're cooking it at a high enough temperature where it's going to kill off any bacteria in your marinade. Which you know, unless you're cooking your chicken at low temperature, which I don't know why you would, you should be fine. Is that it, Fran, for now?
Thank you so much.
All right, so this is looking really good. It's browning on both sides. Woo! And just keep in mind, of course, your chicken fat is definitely going to splatter. So there is like a splatter of oil around here and even a little splatter of oil on the floor. So just be very careful when you're cooking chicken because it likes to splatter, and be careful not to slip near your oven once you when you do that. A good trick for that actually is you take some salt. I mean, then you have to clean the salt off the floor, but you can temporarily sprinkle the salt over the chicken grease, and it kind of acts like salt over ice, you know, so you don't slip around. All right, so let's pop this into the oven. Our oven is hot still. And let's finish up our class with our final recipe, which is the goat cheese salad. So this is very stereotypical of French bistro menus. You're always going to find a salade avec la chèvre chaude, which means a salad with hot goat cheese. And it's delicious, and it's one of my favorite things on the French Bistro menu. So the way that you make it is, first you have to freeze your goat cheese. So the way that I did this is I bought, just your regular soft goat cheese in a log, nothing too fancy or special. And then I rolled it in whole wheat. I'm using whole wheat breadcrumbs because we try to make things a little healthier here. I rolled it in whole wheat breadcrumbs that were mixed with a little bit of oil. You can use the grapeseed or olive oil or anything like that, right? And so these have been sitting in the freezer, so they're pretty, I don't know if you can hear that. They're pretty firm, right? But now we're gonna bake them. So I'm just gonna put them on my parchment lined sheet pan. I've never made this recipe with this kind of goat cheese. I usually buy the one that's like, it kind of has like it's like a log, but it has kind of a firm rim around it. But I couldn't find that. So I always want to try to work with ingredients that you all can find. So we're just going to try this today using our run-of-the-mill standard goat cheese. Let's put this into the oven and bake this while we make our salad. Okay. So salade verte, right? Literally just means green salad. This is a nice box of mixed greens. Of course, you can use, Boston lettuce or Bib lettuce or anything like that. Arugula would be fine too, although it's not traditional, but it would work. And for this one, very, very simple. We're going to make our dressing by, I'm going to throw everything into a jar and just shake it. Simple. You could also use a bowl and a whisk. I have here this is sort of the key, I think, to this dressing, mustard powder. So you can either buy mustard powder or you can grind your own from mustard seeds. And one of the reasons that I like to use, I often will use mustard in my dressings. It's a great emulsifier, and I love that it has like a little bit of an acidic flavor, and it just adds some dimension to the salad dressing. But mustard does have other things added to it. So vinegar, salt, mustard seeds, among other ingredients. So if you want to get more pure and just to the root, you can just use that mustard powder. We're going to throw in a little bit of red wine vinegar. And you could use, white balsamic for this as well, or white wine vinegar would work too. The general rule of thumb for dressings is 1 part acid to 3 parts fat. And I say general because it sort of depends on the acid that you're using. Like apple cider vinegar is really, really tart, and then like lemon juice is not so tart. So, so you can adjust how much fat, in this case olive oil, you use depending on the strength and acidity of your vinegar. You just want something that's balanced, right? You want something that you taste it and it doesn't like go right to your throat and make you think, oh my gosh, this is just too acidic, right? You want something that's balanced. Adding a bit of salt here. And this is a good trick to use your leftover jars. Just shake that up. It's a good way to emulsify your dressing. Right, so usually olive oil and vinegar sit separately, but we are making them connect and emulsify by using air and the mustard powder. So you can see it's all bound together now, right? So you can make this dressing and keep it, in your refrigerator, even on your countertop. There's really nothing in here that's going to go bad. The only thing I will say is that you may need to shake it up a little bit before you use it. All right, so we'll pour this over our greens. And Fran, how's everyone doing? Any other questions coming in? I see some activity over there.
Yes, indeed. So I see that a few of your participants are cooking along with you, and they are saying that it is smelling delicious in their home. I miss being in the teaching kitchen because I used to be able to smell all of that one day. But from Deborah,
you'll be back.
one day from Deborah, I said, Deborah would like to know the difference between goat and feta cheese, and would feta cheese work with this recipe?
Ooh, all right, Deborah, so fantastic question. So goat and feta, how beautiful and glossy that is. Just one note on the salad, you want to toss your salad generally right before you serve it, because the acid in the vinegar is going to start essentially cooking and wilting your leaves. So toss and serve right away. That's the goal. So in regards to feta versus goat cheese, and I'm just going to prepare my parsley here for our chicken dish. You just want to make sure, I don't think that they're interchangeable, because feta is drier than goat cheese. Typically, it's much drier. It's much saltier too. If you taste the two side by side, feta is very, very salty. And I think the main differences between feta and goat cheese are the animal that it's produced from. So feta cheeses are usually cow or sheep based, and the milk that's used to make that cheese is either from a cow or a sheep. I've never seen a goat's milk feta. It's possible that it's out there because people are very creative with their cheese making. But yeah, so I wouldn't try to make that adjustment. But it's a good question.
Thank you. And then from Valerie, would you be able to coat your goat cheese with chopped nuts?
Oh, that's a very creative question, Val. I think you could. You could probably like chop up some walnuts and mix that in with your breadcrumbs, or even just cake your goat cheese in walnuts. I don't see why not. I think that could probably work. I haven't tried it, so I can't 100% say so, but I don't think of anything from like a culinary or chemical standpoint as to why it wouldn't work.
That's very interesting. We have another interesting question from Val. And you know how you can flavor olive oil with garlic or herbs to vary your dressing? She wants to know if you can flavor your vinegar with garlic or herbs.
Yeah, oh, Val, very good question. So Valerie, what you're talking about is called infusions. And you can definitely infuse your olive oil with garlic or rosemary and throw things in your olive oil. You do have to be careful with garlic and olive oil in particular, because if you don't do it right, you can create botulism, which is very problematic when it comes to food safety. So just make sure that you're doing that the right way. But vinegar, oh my gosh, you can throw anything into vinegar, and it will basically, because vinegar is pure acid, it's going to completely preserve whatever you throw in there. So it's a pretty low risk situation to try that with vinegar. So I infuse vinegars with rosemary and thyme and raspberries, crushed raspberries and things like that. Certainly you can infuse vinegars pretty easily. Yeah. That's funny that you asked that, Valerie. I was just thinking about doing a class on like infusions. I was kind of thinking that could be an interesting thing. So more to come.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Just getting my parsley chopped up here, and I always remind everybody, have a good sharp knife when you're working with your herbs, because otherwise you're going to smush them and crush them, and you want to slice them. If you smush them and crush them, they're going to emit their liquid, you're going to lose some nutrients, you're not going to be happy. So you want to just slice them gently. All right, we're going to zest up some lemon. So again, I have my lemon zester here, and I'm just going to work around that lemon, right? Making sure I get all that zest. You can always zest your lemons and then throw the zest in the freezer. That way you can use it anytime you want some lemon zest. And once you've zested a lemon, you can keep it in the refrigerator for, a week or two. It will start to kind of dry up because it doesn't have that nice protective coating on it. So just keep that in mind, that you want to use your lemon within a week or two after you've zested it. But certainly it's a great flavor to throw in. I saw another question, Fran.
Yes, so actually just a few comments about the infusion class, which is a great idea, and people would love to join.
Yeah.
But let's see here. There's a question regarding, this is from E. She was wondering if the chicken can be finished on the stove instead of the oven.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I have never done it that way, but I certainly think you could just turn it down and maybe cover it so it really cooks all the way through. You're not going to get the same effect though as we are going to get here in the oven from doing it this way. So it's possible, but it will be a different result.
What
So
about in a Dutch oven?
Yeah, I think you probably could. I can feel that this is not done yet. Just peek in here. This needs more time. You probably could. I haven't tried it, so I'm not sure. I can't really speak to that part. Yeah.
And I always
Other
wondered
questions?
about this. Yes, regarding the lemon zest, could that be stored or does it have to be used right away? Maybe frozen?
Yeah, so it's best to, if you're going to store your lemon zest, throw it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it. Yeah, it keeps really well in the freezer. I mean, you could put it in the fridge too if you're going to use it within a day or two. That's no problem. But it works really well just throwing it in the freezer. Good questions, everybody. Oh my goodness, everyone's paying close attention today. All right.
Very good.
So let me show you the chocolate pot de crème, what they look like when they're done. Right, so you can see here, and I just want to show you the texture because they're really divine, right? You can see it's almost like a chocolate mousse. Here, I can feed it to you, Fran, through the camera. Right, so you can see it's really this nice, moussey, light texture. Right?
Oh, there's Sully.
Yeah, there we go.
Behind me.
Hi, Sally. So that's going to be the chocolate pot de crème when it's done. It's super easy. It's no bake, no fuss, and again, very, very easy. I'm sorry, I'm torturing you all this evening. I know.
Valerie actually has a quick question that made me giggle out loud. Since she is French, she wants to know how about some booze in the chocolate pot de crème?
Well, Valerie, I think you're right. This class is truly not complete without a glass of wine or a glass of something to go with it. You're absolutely right that alcohol is definitely a part of the French culture. I think that would be fine if you wanted to use some kind of alcohol in your pot de crème. Certainly a splash here or there, something that you enjoy would be fine. Just keep in mind though that you're not cooking it. So often when we use alcohol in dishes, we kind of we cook it and we cook out that really alcohol taste, and we're kind of left with that that taste that's not so abrasive, but it's like still there. So that won't happen in this kind of variation. You know, if you throw alcohol in here. Yeah.
So in comparison to the type of recipe you use today with the tofu, would you say that the traditional pot of the crème would taste the same? Or is it completely different?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're actually quite comparable. I think for me, what really makes the pot de crème taste is it's actually more about the texture to me in pot de crème. It's like you want something that's really glossy and smooth and chocolatey, and you definitely get that with this recipe. So I know I've got a lot of tofu skeptics out there. Certainly I was one of them. So just try this one because you will be pleasantly surprised. And silken tofu is you're not going to taste it in this recipe. It's just going to add a beautiful silken texture.
I do have to agree. It is delicious.
Yeah.
So Emily, it's about 6:11.
Oh,
so
great.
I don't know if you wanted, I think you're right in time to plate that food.
I do, yes. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna let our chicken go for a little bit longer because it's not quite ready. And let's get our salad together here. So pretty simple. Oh, I forgot a spatula.
And tofu
so
can be
eaten tofu.
Right out of the package, or does it need to be cooked?
So tofu is already, tofu is a product that never needs to be cooked. It can be eaten straight from the package. Certainly, you can cook it if you want to, but there's no like food safety reason that you would have to. Yeah,
Thank you.
great. All right, so I'm gonna get our little salad here with our goat cheese croutons. And usually these are nice, they're really cute. They're kind of browned and they're soft. So they will kind of meld into your salad, which is really yummy. So usually you would go to your French bistro. You probably wouldn't get, 5 little croutons like we did. Oh, Fran, I think we lost my spotlight, but that's okay. So that's sort of what that one would look like. And let's get our potatoes out. So as you can see here, these potatoes are nicely brown. Of course, you would want to serve these potatoes hot, right? So if you were doing this at home, you might want to time it a little bit differently. All right, let's put our potatoes here. And with that chicken, again, what are we looking for? We're looking for it to be cooked all the way through. So I've got my meat thermometer ready. So I'll add a little parsley to this, maybe sprinkle some lemon zest, and then let's add our chicken. Let's just do a quick temperature check. So I have a little meat thermometer here, and basically what you're looking for with your chicken is you want this number to go all the way up and hold at 165 degrees. So I'm going to find one here, and I think it's, let's see how high it goes. Well, I think it's looking quite close. So I'll just plate it for you all anyway, so you can see sort of what it looks like. There. I can always pop this back in the oven. So voila, your French bistro chicken dinner awaits you. All right, so there's our chicken, our potatoes, our salade de chèvre chaude, and our chocolate pot de crème. So if you are like me and you are missing your outdoor dining experiences and your restaurant experiences, certainly you can have your own at home. So I hope you all enjoyed this class. Thank you for your participation, for your fabulous questions throughout. And we have a few more classes to run out this year. We've got one tomorrow on plant-based soups and stews, as well as one next week that's going to be all about cooking salmon and the techniques involved with that. And then, of course, we have lots of programs coming up in January. So if you're interested, stay tuned. You can check our website, and I'm always happy to send you a calendar directly if you send me an email. And as always, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are our community. This is how we stay connected. This is how we keep cooking and keep each other motivated and inspired and healthy. So thanks to everybody, and of course to Fran for moderating. Happy holidays, and my holiday wish for all of you is that you indulge intelligently, that you savor your food mindfully, and that you connect joyfully. So thanks everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you, Emily. Bye, everyone.